of people have to figure out, but both of the two of you have figured out what it is you want to do. And then you've been very good, Stephanie, about figuring out sort of how to go about finding the opportunities and then positioning yourself in the best way possible for those opportunities. So I just was hoping you could spend a little bit of time sort of walking us through the way you look at it, if that's okay.
Thank you so much for the kind words. Yeah, so what worked for me may not work for everyone. I really don't know what especially worked for me because I'm still honestly on the search. But I did put together a PowerPoint just to keep myself more organized. I put together this PowerPoint based on the points that you emailed me on. So
oh goodness,
I can share my screen if that works.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just kind of what worked for me. I'm trying to present. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Yeah, so I would start just identifying all entry-level positions that may be of interest. And I would start with just identifying kind of like your why, like what's the core idea that you're passionate about. For me, it was, and it still is storytelling and understanding people. I mean, for the past 3 years in my internships, I thought I could do this through communications and marketing, and that's still my first choice in terms of ideal role, but I also realized that this passion can be executed through other roles as well. And I did that through, looking at bullet points in different entry-level roles. So I see that there's a need for a lot of business development representatives nowadays. I just see that much more hiring than marketing people. And I was reading, bullet points. If it's something that kind of resonates with me, if I can still storytell, if I can still reach out to people, if I can still write, then I would apply for it. But I say to kind of be open but intentional, because sometimes, these roles that are hiring may be completely off from your core passion. And that's when I would kind of skew away from it, because it is good to be open, but it's good to be intentional. And I'll speak on that later on in the PowerPoint, where I kind of once applied for a role that was just kind of hiring, but it was really relevant to me. And when I went to the interview process, it just wasn't me. But, continue applying for your first choice roles, but also search for other role titles that will still allow you to execute your passion is where I would start off. So my example, like I said, I like understanding people and storytelling. My first choice, obviously was in the tech industry. I wanted to be in comms or marketing. But then I also noticed that, roles such as customer success or customer experience, customer support, they also let me kind of do what I wanted to do without having that title of marketing or comms. And in terms of industry, I was more open to, just anything that kind of gives me purpose, a mission I believe in. So this will vary, obviously, depending on who is job searching, but I hope this kind of helps you as well, Ahmed, to kind of just identify what's your passion and other titles that may allow you to execute that. Some platforms I've used, mostly company careers page and LinkedIn postings, I would say. I've tried Glassdoor, Handshake, Built in SF, ZipRecruiter, and staffing agencies, but I've had the best luck with the top two. Some common entry role titles I come across is associate, coordinator, or analyst. Representative is usually for sales roles, and I think rotation programs are best because they're usually especially only for new grads. So like everyone else who's laid off usually wouldn't apply for these rotation programs. The problem with these new grad rotation programs is that they start recruiting the year prior to your graduation. So right around now is actually when they would launch for class of 2021, which isn't our case, sadly. And some other roles that may be an exception is specialist or project/program manager. Specialist is usually for 3+ years of experience, but after speaking to some recruiters, they said that sometimes they accept college grads as well. And project or program manager, even though it says manager, you're really just managing like, I guess, programs and deadlines, not necessarily a manager level role. So I thought that it was a manager level role. So I used to skew away from that.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Feel free to interrupt, by the way.
Yeah, something I noticed every time I'm applying for a job or just, looking at the job description, they're always asking for many years of experience. If it's a position that's an entry-level position, it's going to have a associate level position where the experience is very high. Sometimes they might even ask for a master's. I also have like LinkedIn Premium, which shows me the competitors, basically the candidates who are applying, and they would have much more experience in many things. So I'm just kind of thinking like, hey, if an entry level position is requiring all these experiences, it might be very difficult to actually get that position. I'm not sure what your experience like. Have you had experience something similar like that? Basically, like how would I even break in if an entry level position is asking for so many things?
Yeah, definitely. I also look at that and I kind of try to just ignore it nowadays, honestly. Because even at the most entry level role, I do see people who have like masters or mid senior level. I would say if it says anywhere from 1 to 3 or 3+ years, just go ahead and apply. 5+ years is kind of pushing it, but I would say anything under 5, just apply. Obviously, it's best if it says like 0 to 1 years. I don't see that personally. And if I do see that role, there is like 500 applicants. There's this one position I like
Yeah.
interviewed for, and she told me there was like 500 other people, and that was the only position I saw that said 1+ years. So I would say zero to 3 is your best. 3+ is still okay. I would say my most response rates were the ones within that 3 year range, but there has been one interview I've had for a role that was 3+ years. But anything over 5 is kind of just pushing it, I would say, as a new grad. Um, and I'll speak more to how to stand out in later slides. But it is difficult. You're not going to see a lot of 0 to 1, so just go ahead and apply for it. Ignore the competition pool. I would just go for it because it is going to be competitive. Even for the most basic roles, there are hundreds of applicants.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, how about when you say company careers page, how do you decide which companies to explore? Do you just sort of surf the internet to find companies that might be of interest?
Yeah, good question. So I think company's career page is better than LinkedIn postings because sometimes roles are posted on the careers page before they're posted on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn data isn't accurate. I think a recruiter told me that sometimes the date that LinkedIn posts it isn't actually a new role. It's actually been out for a while on the careers page. In terms of how I find these companies, it's really a mix of both. It's a mix of, companies I've just kind of had my eye out for a while, those ideal companies I'm looking for, and then companies or industries that I kind of assume are doing well right now. Specifically, tech, or I would say the gaming industry is doing pretty well right now too. So just do a little research on, what hasn't been as, impacted by COVID, and keep your eye out for those company career pages. And for the companies you just don't know about, you're going to have to kind of rely on LinkedIn job boards. But yeah, I would go on careers pages, make a list of dream companies, refresh their careers page like once a day or something. And that's when it comes out, you'll be the first one to kind of apply. A recruiter also told me that you should apply within a week. Anything past that, they probably already started the first round interview phase. So try to do it within a week is best.
Okay.
I think to increase your chances of receiving a response, I would say networking is the most important thing. So like you said, there are so many people who have like an MBA or a master's, and you look at those LinkedIn analytical data. I think your way to kind of get that interview is to network with people. So instead of relying on your application to just get pulled out, someone who can reach out to HR to literally pull out your application. And I say there's 2 types of networking where, I think the first one is the best one, but it isn't, ideal in this case for every company, I understand, but you should kind of make a list of dream companies and just reach out to people in your dream roles for like a quick informational call. And even if there isn't a role posted, I think this is the best time to kind of network with them because you're not asking for something yet. But that this company will thrive past COVID, so when there is a role posted, you reach out to them and then they'll like reply much faster for a referral or an introduction. But I know that's not ideal for every company, especially that you don't know every company in the world that's hiring right now. So there's also another type of networking where you see a role that is open on the job board and you kind of search it up on LinkedIn, and then you kind of source out content or a hiring manager to reach out to. And I'll do a demo real quick on this.
Oh, wonderful. I was just going to ask something around that.
But yeah, this is a role I actually found yesterday, and I actually applied for yesterday. So after applying, I see that there's 93 other people right now. So I just kind of search up life cycle marketing coordinator. So and I would switch it to content. And then I would filter it to the company, which was Life 360. And then I would click apply. And then I saw that this woman, she posted that, the marketing team is hiring a life cycle marketing coordinator, which is the role I applied for. And I'm really lucky in a sense that, this role actually had a posting. Not every role will have like someone post about it, but this one did. So I kind of clicked on her profile. And since she already advertised that they are hiring, I kind of just reached out to her, and I'll kind of actually show you, because this is actually someone who responded to me, which is great because many of them don't respond to me. But I kind of told her, it's a little bit long, but I told her, nice to meet you, kind of, who I am, what I did in the past, and then why I'm reaching out to her. And I kind of gave my resume, and I told her, if you think it's a fit, would love to chat further. Hope you're having a great day. And she actually responded to me, which is great. Again, this is really rare for me, but she said that she'll let the hiring manager know and look out for it. Of course, this was like yesterday, so I don't know what the results will be, but I think this is a great way to kind of, again, get your application noticed. But yeah, I would definitely source people out. Sorry, you were saying something?
I said that's pretty awesome. So why did you filter it based on content and not just, what's so special about filtering it based on content? Are you just seeing if they're creating a post about a job application?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of why I filtered it. Also because, well, this one was the VP of marketing who posted it, but sometimes the actual hiring manager will post it saying like, I'm hiring for my team. So it's great to kind of directly reach out to that person instead of waiting for, HR or like the ATS system to pick up your resume. But that's kind of the reasoning behind why I decided to reach out through content. But sometimes, companies will not, post like someone from the company won't post that they're hiring. The role will just be up. And my strategy for that is to still try to find someone, but you don't know who exactly to reach out to. So I kind of read in the job description, it says we're looking for a passionate, marketing coordinator who will support the senior life cycle marketing manager. So, let's say she didn't make a post and I didn't find her, I would probably, copy and paste senior life cycle marketing manager. And I would, again, filter it. But this time I would add their current company, which is Life 360. And then I would apply. So I get multiple results. Some of these are, past roles, but I assume it's the first one. So I would have reached out to her and, I wouldn't necessarily say like, I applied for this role and I know that she's the hiring manager. I'd probably phrase it in like, I'm not sure if you're the person hiring for this role, but I wanted to kind of, give it a try and reach out. If you're not the person hiring for this role, can you point me to the right direction? That's kind of how I would phrase it. But because Ariana already wrote a post, I didn't necessarily, just source out a random marketing manager. But let's say, in perspective, if she didn't write a post, that's kind of how I would source out someone. I think it's best to, with every application you submit, if you already network with someone, to reach out for an introduction or a referral before you apply. If you don't know someone, like for the role I saw at first, where I just kind of found it on a LinkedIn job board, I would still try to network the way, you kind of source someone out. You just want someone to read your application, because oftentimes applications are kind of just left in this HR system. And especially right now, so many roles are so competitive and so many people are kind of jobless. A lot of people are getting, referred by their friends. And with so many applicants, these people kind of rely on the people that have an introduction. So you want to try to, make sure to introduce yourself somehow. If you don't have an introduction, make the introduction for yourself. And something else to stand out is to tailor your resume with the words from the job description. So I actually go back. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. But um, I think it's best to match the words as best as possible. Obviously, if you're applying for a couple roles a day, it can get kind of time consuming. But I noticed, especially, I'm hunting for the same types of roles. It's either marketing, comms, sales, customer success. They kind of have the same keywords, in every role I apply to, because I'm executing that same passion of storytelling. Campaigns is a keyword, marketing calendar, editorial calendar, cross-functional teams is the word I see in basically every role I apply to. So if you tailor your resume enough for one role, in the next one you apply for, which I assume is going to be similar because you're not going from engineering to art, right? I'm sure that no matter how different the roles you're applying for are, they're still somewhat similar, that if you edit it enough one time, the second time you edit it, it'll actually be much quicker to kind of edit the next role to adjust it. And let's go back to slide.
Something that I found helpful is creating a master calendar for my resume. Basically, a list of, sometimes it's like 2 pages, list of all my experiences, and based on the position I'm applying to, I might like swap experiences and personalize it towards that specific job. But I'd say it's a little bit time consuming, but I know hopefully it's more worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good to prioritize bullet points as well. So I used to kind of put my favorite project at a company that I did on the top, but nowadays I kind of prioritize, well, if I'm applying for a, project manager role, which is essentially just cross collaborating with different stakeholders, it's not really much copywriting for campaigns. I'd probably put my cross collaborating bullet point first. So I would prioritize, what this role is asking for first. For cover letters, I've spoken to a couple recruiters and they all said that they're usually left unread, but it's still good to do one if you have one. I'm not going to discourage anyone from writing one, but I will say that out of the 6 interviews I've had, I didn't write one for either of those. But again, there are some that I do write for. I'm not going to say that I don't write for all of them. Some of them actually do ask for a cover letter, and that's when I do submit one. But if they don't ask for one, I would probably save time to, just apply and find another job posting. And also, like I said, being an early applicant, if you spend too much time writing a cover letter, you're not going to be an early applicant anymore. So it's left for you to decide. Something that recruiters did tell me is that attaching a link to your portfolio in your resume is helpful, because some recruiters do look at that.
Actually, that's a good point you mentioned about cover letters, because I do spend a decent amount of time just brushing up my cover letter, making it more personalized, and I realize it does take a lot of time. And by the time I apply, there's already like 50 people or even more.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
at the
If
same
anything, oh, sorry, go on.
at the same time, I'm just afraid, like, hey, if I don't put a cover letter, how are they gonna know my story if it's just experiences? Um, so it's just kind of like the pros and cons of, hey, should I do it or not?
Yeah, I used to feel that way too. I used to feel like it was the only other component I had to stand out. But then, and this is just coming from my Autodesk recruiter friend and this recruiter I spoke with at Cisco, they both don't read it. And I'm not speaking for everyone who doesn't read it, but because they get so much volume of applications, they kind of just look straight for the resume and referrals. But the stuff you would put in your cover letter, so you're going to personalize it, right? Like why this company, why this role, the stuff you would put in your intro, you can put that stuff when you outreach to people, those hiring managers, right? When you send that message to them, you can kind of write like, why you're interested in this role, why this company, what's the story behind it. So you can kind of put some components of that cover letter in your cold outreach to these hiring managers. And I think that would kind of make you stand out because, you know, you're not only, you know, asking that you want to be a part of this company, you're showing that you're really interested in, and now you actually have someone, at least someone's name to reach out to that will hopefully read your cold outreach message versus when you're just submitting an application online, you don't really know how long it's going to sit in the HR system.
That makes sense. They might actually read it at the end or when it's close to the interviews because there's so many applicants. So that was a good point.
That's also true. And I would say for networking, because I've had a lot of people who don't reply to me, I'm going to be honest. I think it's best to leverage a contact. So, you know, if you can find someone who's connected to 10,000 degrees, I reach out to Megan. I cross check with her before I do my, you know, completely random networking if she knows anyone. And if she doesn't, then I kind of go cold outreaching. Or, you know, if your past internship colleagues kind of know someone, I would kind of reach out to them and ask them for like a quick little introduction. But if you can't find a mutual contact, which is fine because there's so many companies out there, I would try to find a similarity with that person. So, you know, did you kind of go to the same school? Do you guys major in something similar? Or did they put something in their bio that you kind of really clicked with? I would put that in your message, like, hey, so and so, I'm reaching out to you. Great to meet like a fellow, you know, alumni. Or, you know, I came across your biography, saw you're really passionate about storytelling. Me too, would love to chat. I would put something, you know, similar because people are usually more likely to respond to that than a random stranger from my past experience. Something else that really helped me was actually attending webinars, but not the ones that everyone attends. So, you know, it's been trending on LinkedIn. Literally, there's so many webinars out there. There are so many people who are trying to help job seekers. I don't know if you came across like Austin Belkak or Juan Solting, because I see those a lot on my feed. Those are good, but because everyone kind of goes to those, I would say that reaching out to the panelists on those, they aren't as likely to respond to you. You kind of want to go to webinars where it's public, but not everyone goes to them. So Workforce Week was good in a sense that it was open to people, but it wasn't open to every single person in the world. So when I did reach out to the panelists, most of them did reply, not all of them, but most of them compared to the completely public ones that I went to on LinkedIn.
So,
Another one was Cisco had this sales lunch and learn that was open, but you kind of had to sign up and you kind of had to come across the person who posted it, which I noticed wasn't very popular. It was public, but it still wasn't completely public. And it was actually at that event where they let me, you know, just drop my resume. And I thought, you know, it was a sales webinar because that's what it said, sales lunch and learn. But it's funny because a recruiter actually got back to me who was in marketing and comms. And she told me that, well, a sales recruiter saw your resume, but thought I'd be a better fit to speak with you. So they weren't hiring any marketing people at the time, but it was great because now I kind of have a connection at Cisco who's recruiting marketing and comms. And she told me, you know, about their current situation and that they may open up a role in Q3. I mean, that's just stuff, you know, I wouldn't have known if I didn't attend that webinar. So I am going to keep my eye out, you know, when August hits, if a role pops up, to be an early applicant. So I would definitely recommend attending webinars, but not the ones where every single person can go to. But to your question.
yeah, so webinars, they're not hiring webinars, they're just webinars about learning about the company and all that sort of things.
Yeah, most of them are kind of just lunch and learns about people and roles.
That makes sense. Okay.
So in that sense, I would kind of reach out to people, not necessarily saying that you want to get hired ASAP, but in a sense that, you know, you really resonated with their story, you want to connect further. And that's when you kind of build that relationship with people who are at these dream companies. They aren't currently hiring, but, you know, when a role kind of does pop up, you can touch base with them quickly. And Workforce Week was actually when I attended one of those, you know, not necessarily hiring webinars, but people just open to chatting. And for DocuSign, that's actually, you know, I met this girl, she and I kind of jumped on a call about what she currently does. And then later on, about a month later, I saw a role open up, and that's actually how I got my referral, which led to a couple of interviews. So I definitely think that webinars are a great place to find people who are willing to help out. I wouldn't say it's a place where you can find a job ASAP, but it's a place to find people who are willing to help out with your job search. And I also recommend, you know, online groups. I'm a part of Built by Girls. I think it's for girls, but it's basically people who want to go into tech who are female leaders, and they pair you with like someone who's currently working in tech, and you go through 3 networking sessions. But I think, you know, it's really important to try your best to network when you don't need to. It can be as little as just a week before a role is going to pop up, and you can kind of guess certain companies that are going to have a role pop up. Like, I'm sure Amazon is hiring crazy right now. They may not have a role that's open for you, but you know that they're eventually going to open up a role as business gets better. So I would definitely reach out to someone before you find that role, so people kind of don't feel like they're being used, even though you secretly know that you're going to reach out back to them later on in life. But yeah, I would also follow up. I would follow up 3 times max. If they don't reply after 3 times, I would wait 48-hour increments. Then I would just move on to the next person. And for your resume, so you kind of talked about how to reach out to stand out. And you might already be doing these things, but something that I found really helpful was to follow this formula, kind of, you know, accomplished X by doing Y measured by Z. This is something I saw very commonly across a lot of, you know, in posts, and to really quantify, you know, the things that you're doing. Something else that recruiters actually gave me pretty good feedback on, the one from Cisco and Autodesk, is that they actually really like this 3-word thing that I put there. So when you look at roles, and I'm not sure what kind of roles you're looking at, but if you're looking at non-technical roles, they usually have soft skills they're looking for, and it's usually analytical, creative, something like that. I would say find 3 words that really resonate with you in those soft skills section, and you should kind of put that under your name if that clicks with you, because recruiters told me when they kind of read my resume, they were like, oh, that's kind of different. And one of them actually told me storyteller is a really common word they search for when it comes to communication/marketing people. And I don't know what field you're going into, but you'll kind of notice certain words always pop up, like someone who's collaborative, someone who's analytical. So I would find 3 words that stick with you and put that under there if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, it is intriguing because it would make me want to read your resume. I'm like, huh, storytelling, tell me more.
Thank you. Yeah, I would definitely look at what sticks with you, or look through a lot of job applications and see what, I guess, soft skills pop up.
It also makes me think that whatever resonates for you, which, because that's a very authentic 3-word comment about you, if it resonates with somebody else, that means that that's a good fit. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, and I'm moving on to interviews. So I thoroughly believe if you can get like a good referral, you can move on to the interview process. But I'm not going to say that you have to have a referral to get to the interview process, because I've had 2 interviews where I straight up cold applied for, and there was like 300 applicants, and I somehow got a call back. But I would say the other 4 interviews I did have were through networking, but not all hope is lost if you don't have a referral. But try your best to kind of get a referral/introduction. But at all companies, it was a multiple round process, I would say. And I guess the most typical one was a recruiter phone screen is the first round. And I think one of them shared with me that they were screening around 15 candidates out of a couple hundred applications. And then the second round was hiring manager phone screen. And the third round was an assignment with a panel. And this is the same for the current company that I'm interviewing for as well. So it seems like this is a pretty standardized process for, I guess, competitive roles today. It's a 3-step process. And a couple questions that I was asked a lot during the phone screen, and I think the recruiter phone screen is where you really, really want to stand out, because there's 15 people, but there's one job in the end. So you kind of have to outstand all those 15 people for this one job. And when recruiters are speaking to so many people every day, I think it's really important that when they ask why this company and why this role, you kind of share your story. I think it's best to kind of share a personal story. And if you can tie it back to being first generation, I think that would really make you stand out. For example, there was this company I was interviewing for, and they asked me why I decided on, you know, interviewing with this company when there's so many other tech companies in San Francisco. Like, what makes us special to you? And I kind of responded along the lines of, you know, I really believed in their mission and vision and their product. But also, a lot of companies talk about diversity and inclusion these days. I don't really know how it's actually executed because it's such a topic of, concern. And I said that this company, happened to kind of be on this Workforce Week panel, which was designed specifically for underrepresented people. And I kind of shared my story of being first generation. And I think that's kind of what made me stand out in the phone screen. So I would try my best, if you were to make it to the interview process, to really answer this question with much thought. And something else that I was asked a lot on is that I have a background in marketing and communications. So why are you considering this role, which isn't in marketing and comms? And that kind of brings back to, the first stage when I told you, be open, but be intentional about the roles you're looking for. That may not be your ideal first choice. Because a lot of people have asked me, why am I switching roles? And you kind of have to have some kind of backstory to it. I couldn't necessarily share that this is a job, like the market is tight, so I decided to apply for a different role, right? So kind of think some kind of story you have. I mean, I don't really know, but I think I said that I was just interested in learning different skills, as well as transferable skills and being more customer facing because I love understanding people. But think of a story. And this is a question I got asked at LinkedIn last year when I was interviewing, but I also got asked in 2 more interviews throughout this process. So I guess it's a pretty popular question to kind of, I guess, prep yourself for, which is, what is a piece of feedback you received and what did you do with it? But yeah, I would definitely say come up with a personal story, tie it back to being first generation if you can. It really sticks to people when you say that. And your tone of voice is really, really important because for the first 2 rounds that I've been at, it's usually just a phone call, so you can't smile or do hand gestures. So how energetic you sound is really, what they kind of think about you.
So it seems
And
like you've been through like multiple rounds of interviews, but like no luck in getting some positions. And I feel like although that's good, it's kind of wasting your time because you're not getting the position itself. Are they at least providing you some feedback where you can improve in some areas? Have you told them that?
yeah, great question. So every time I moved to the next round, but not to the last round, I would say every rejection I've gotten, it was really generic. It was kind of just like, no hard feelings. There was just someone else with more experience than you. It's not about you. It's just about the candidate pool. From there, I don't know if it was right to argue for more feedback, but it just seemed like that was the only feedback they wanted to give me. And I think I kind of saw online that there's a lot of legal reasons and people are usually kind of skewed away from giving feedback. And, this kind of goes on to my last topic about your health, is that you don't really know about, what happens after you do something, right? Like you can be accountable and you should be accountable. You should definitely try your best to prepare for these applications and interviews, but you don't necessarily know about the things that you can't control. A lot of roles, like you said, have hundreds of applicants, but only one person will get the job. And also, a recruiter, the one at Cisco, shared with me that if a job is removed in less than a week from a job board, then that role already had a candidate. They just had to post it for legal reasons. So also know that, sometimes maybe it wasn't about you. If you get a rejection in less than a week for a role that was posted in less than a week, she told me that that role was already hired. They just had to post it for, legal and diversity reasons. And obviously it's not fair, but you kind of just have to know that sometimes that's just kind of how it is. And, when it comes to moving through each round, I would definitely love to know exactly, what made that ideal candidate. But they kind of share the same things, they kind of just tell me that someone else had more experience, or their ideal candidate is someone hardworking, curious to learn. I know it doesn't really help to hear very vague feedback, but I would say you kind of just have to pick yourself up from that. I mean, if you tried your best for a company and it wasn't enough, then maybe it's telling you to search for your next company where your best is enough. Um, but definitely I would say to improve where you can improve, but also, let go of the rest. I definitely see a lot of people upskilling and, taking all these online courses for certifications and e-learning classes. I would say only do the classes you're interested in, but for the rest, I wouldn't necessarily take a class just for the certificate itself, because none of my interviewers ever asked me if I did an e-learning course during COVID. And no one asked me what I did during COVID or what I learned. I know a common question that gets posted is that interviewers will ask you what you learned during this time, but they really didn't ask me what I learned during this time. If anything, they asked about my health, but they didn't ask about, if I did an e-learning course. So I would say do it if you are interested, but don't do it because you feel like you have to be super productive. And it's not going to be easy. Obviously, I've had a lot of rejections, whether it's, just throwing an application in or making it to the final round, but you kind of just have to continue the cycle. That's all I have to share.
Well, this is great.
Oh my gosh, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I mean,
Yeah.
I would add to that, there's only so much you can do, right? And as you say, it's just a hyper competitive market right now, too. So in some ways, you just have to be careful that you're measuring yourself in ways that you can hold yourself accountable. I mean, how many jobs are you applying to? So that you don't, it's what you can control. So I had one other question. Have you ever used a platform called Indeed? I hear that one every once in a while.
Yeah, I actually haven't. I've heard about that one as well. I think I've just been on LinkedIn for a long time and
Yeah.
Glassdoor.
And that's working for you really well, it seems like. And how many, if you had to guess, what's the ratio of sort of applying to the actual first round interview that you would get? Does that make sense? Like, do you have to apply to 50 jobs to get an interview, or 20, or, because I know
Yeah.
it's a lot, and in this marketplace, I'm sure it's even more. And even using all your strategies that you've used, like making sure you're one of the early entrants, and targeting the words in your application and all that to match up. What's just ballpark?
Yeah, I think it would be around, so far I've applied to around like 70 to 80 jobs, but I wouldn't necessarily say like, after I hit 50, I started hearing back from a lot of places. I think it was more of, I really tried to get a connection when I first started applying, because in the past I would just apply for roles and I would, somehow hear back, and I just wasn't hearing back. And I was reaching out to, these free, I guess, lunch and learns or recruiters who were open to speaking with me. And they said there was nothing wrong with my resume. I mean, they had a quick pointers here and there to like reword certain bullet points, but they said most of it is fine. So it wasn't my resume. And they kind of told me, well, try your best to get like a referral. They told me that sometimes the system isn't fair, but a lot of companies have a very big referral system culture. But I would say I have around 80 applications. I started getting interviews, I would say around 50 after, but that was more because I really started to kind of introduce myself to the hiring manager or find a connection prior applying.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that makes sense. So that's all about the networking again, right?
You know what? I think if you try your best, just know that, if it wasn't enough for them, then someone else will accept your best. I would say that. And no hard feelings, that company was once something I was looking for. So I'm not going to be like, oh, now I don't like them anymore. And I think one more thing I have to add is to follow up. It's funny because for 2 recruiting processes I've like submitted my availability and like recruiters don't get back to me. I'm not sure if it's just because everyone's working from home and they're just not replying as much as they should. But if people don't reply to you within 48 hours, I would follow up, because for 2 recruiting processes at 2 pretty large companies too, it wasn't just some small random startup, where I submitted my availability and I didn't hear back for like 3 days. When they asked me for, next round interview, I'm actually currently in the process for AppLovin with that. So I would follow up after 48 hours, because I think if you keep waiting, you might not ever hear back. So I would definitely follow up after 48 hours to kind of get your name in there if they reached out to you.